Welcome back to the Lowry for today's third and final ceremony of the University of Salford graduation. This session will include the presentation of more than 300 students from the School of Computing, Science and Engineering and the School of Environment and Life Sciences. The vocational nature of several courses of the School of Environment and Life Sciences can be seen with jobs such as Environmental Health Officer, Health and Safety Officer, Housing Officer and Waste Manager. Biology, biochemistry graduates favor further study at master's level or teacher training, or jobs in research. Other occupations include conservation worker, housing manager, medical laboratory assistant, neighborhood management officer, project officer, and regeneration officer. Vocational courses lead many computing, science, and engineering graduates into engineering areas such as acoustics, aeronautical, civil, design, manufacturing, projects, software, and structural. Other jobs include acoustics consultant, information manager, nuclear reactor analyst, specialist coatings manager, teacher test engineer, transport planner, and web developer. Many graduates find employment in the media, in television, and broadcasting. Some graduates choose to further study, especially in the areas of aeronautical engineering and physics. There will also be an honorary award to Dr. Ralph Cohn, a Salfordian educated at Salford Grammar School, a recipient of the Queen's Award for Export Achievement. Dr. Cohn is not only eminent in the pharmaceutical industry, but he's also a celebrated professional singer. He's also an honorary fellow of the Royal Society and of the Academy of Medical Sciences. Graduates will be presented to the Chancellor of the University, Professor Sir Martin Harris. Each graduate will receive their certificate along with a limited edition print by Salford photographer and painter Harold Riley. Well, the procession's just about to begin, and I'll be back later.
I declare this ceremony open for the conferment of degrees and diplomas of the University of Salford. Welcome to this ceremony today in Salford's magnificent Lowry Centre, where we gather together to mark the award of degrees to so many of the university's graduands. It's a special pleasure to welcome not just the graduands themselves, but also their families and friends, here to share their pride on this very special occasion. It gives me particular pleasure to welcome Dr. Ralph Cohn, whom we shall honour today. Ralph's family escaped war-torn Germany to settle in the northwest, and it is here in Salford that he went to school, including the former Salford Grammar School. As we shall hear, Ralph went on to great things, but he has never forgotten the happy times in the place that welcomed him after he endured the hardships thrust upon him in earlier times. Welcome back to Salford, Ralph. Today's ceremony marks a momentous day for our graduating students, celebrated not just here in Salford, but around the world. Last year, the ceremonies were viewed in 77 countries, as well as in 206 cities and towns here in the United Kingdom. This year also, our ceremonies are being filmed live and broadcast via the web stream around the world. Our university has a rich history stretching back to 1896. Back then, the Salford Working Men's College joined forces with the Pendleton Mechanics Institute to form the Salford Technical Institute, which quickly became the Royal Technical Institute, Salford. The Duke and Duchess of York officiated at the opening ceremony, and Manchester's renowned Hallé Orchestra turned out to accompany the proceedings. At that time, at the end of the 19th century, mechanical engineering, chemicals, textiles and construction dominated the industrial scene in Salford and led to the choice of the principal subjects on offer. A century later, in 1996, the final merger took place to form the University of Salford as we know it today, with a very different range of subjects meeting contemporary needs. I first came to the University of Salford as a young lecturer in 1972, leaving 15 years later as Pro-Vice Chancellor. 5 years ago, I was delighted to be asked to return as Chancellor, and I'm only sorry that this is the last year of my 5-year term. During those 37 years since I first arrived here in Salford, I've seen so many changes, almost all for the better. Most different of all, perhaps, is the physical environment in which we're celebrating today. Here in the former Docklands, we find not only the splendid Lowry Centre, whose grand opening as a Millennium Project in 2000 I remember so well, but so much more besides. And there's one project in particular that I want to allude to, because it says so much about the value that a university can bring to its region when it adds its own strengths to those of its community and of the nation. Thus it is with Media City, fast now becoming a reality. The university has signed a contract to lease 100,000 square feet of property next to the BBC on the waterfront here at Salford Quays. You'll have seen it as you came in, and the University Centre will open in 2011. This development is right at the heart of the biggest single investment in new media ever made in the UK, and will create so many new opportunities for our graduates and many others in related fields. We have already signed a far-reaching partnership agreement with the BBC, which will open up new pathways into employment in the media industry and all those that support it, and develop new talent within the region. The agreement will include new courses, for example, a BSc in digital technology, enterprise training for our students, and student placements within the BBC and associated companies. This is just one example of our growing involvement with the Media City UK project here at Salford Quays, and will greatly raise the university's profile in this most important of fields. And just as important is the university's ever-growing involvement with the NHS, and thereby with the health and well-being of our fellow citizens. Ever since that early work 14 more years ago on what was then called orthopaedic mechanics, the University of Salford has developed its courses and its research in ways that enable our graduates to serve the community locally, nationally, and internationally in an ever-growing range of aspects of healthcare. Just to mention one recent example where so many of the things a university can do come together, last November, the university signed a £1.5 million, 3-year partnership agreement with Skoll, the global foot giant owned by SSL International, the Manchester-based consumer healthcare company. Through the Feet Matter partnership, the expertise of the University Centre for Rehabilitation and Human Performance Research is being used to inform and contribute to the development of products at Skull. The podiatry team from the School of Healthcare Professions are supporting Skull in the provision of its knowledge and education strategy, and patients everywhere are benefiting. Closer to home, the university's estates master plan is nearing completion and includes ambitious projects for the complete transformation of the university campus over the next 10 years to enhance the university's infrastructure and thereby our students' experience. Most recently, this has included improvements to the Adelphi Building's dance studios, refurbishment of the Allerton Annex to create art studios, and the development of office and meeting space in Acton Square. Perhaps even more importantly, the university has earmarked funds for the creation of a one-stop shop for students within University House to provide a single access point for student services in a contemporary and exciting environment, while plans are also being drawn up for new investments elsewhere in central Salford, for example, to rebuild Salford Crescent Station, which may add hundreds of millions more to this total. The university and its surroundings will continue to be regenerated and transformed so that both the university and the wider Salford community will eventually benefit from one of the greenest and most environmentally attractive inner city campuses in the UK. And now let me say just a word about the school whose undergraduate students are graduating in this ceremony. The School of Environment and Life Sciences was very successful in the 2008 review of research in UK universities, with biomedical sciences research ranked 12th out of 70 across the United Kingdom. 80% of its research was judged as of international quality, with 35% being world-leading or of international excellence. A particular research highlight last year was the award of the prestigious Sichuan Jinding Prize to Professor Philip Craig for his 10-year-long contribution to healthcare in China. As another example, OncoProbe, a Manchester-based company, has partnered with Professor McGowan's Centre for Drug Development to develop a method of predicting which cancers will respond to treatment by taking pieces of cancer during surgery and testing to see if treatment can be made more specific for an individual patient. Other research has highlighted possible ways of reducing the number of stillborn lambs on UK sheep farms. This ceremony includes the first group of biomedical scientists to graduate from Salford, and this new vocational programme is now the school's most successful in terms of recruitment. At the same time, the school's geographers and built environment scholars also did exceptionally well, with 3/4 of their research judged of international quality, of that 30% being world-leading or of international excellence. Some of the school's MSc students studying environmental protection have been working with the local social enterprise, Unlimited Potential, to develop new environmental assessment procedures, and other postgraduates studying environmental management have worked on environmentally sustainable methods of managing waste. Andrew Clark, a lecturer in environmental management, has secured funding from the Low Emissions Strategy Development Programme to examine education and training need of specialists working in air quality management and climate change mitigation. While Dr. Philip James, the school's reader in ecology, is contributing to the shaping of new environment-focused interdisciplinary research to establish a national research programme that addresses issues such as the impact of climate change and population growth on the ability of ecosystems to sustain our life, all our lives, here on this planet. The school has also sustained its commitment to public engagement, and during the last academic year, under the auspices of the Biochemical Society, the Royal Society of Chemistry and the Royal Institution, the school's Centre for Drug Design gave outreach lectures to over 5,500 students and 500 members of the general public in Greater Manchester and across England. Finally, researchers from the Salford Housing and Urban Studies Unit have been awarded funding from the Economic and Social Research Council, the government and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation to examine youth homelessness in the North West over the next few years. At the same time, the school is also developing a new blended learning master's programme in housing, which will offer greater study opportunities for those living at a distance from the university and for others in full-time employment to develop their skills in the housing sector. So it's an exciting time for the school, both schools whose students are graduating today. But let me end as I began, by congratulating most warmly all of those of you who are graduating today. You are now entering the next phase of your lives with your new qualification, hopefully helping you not just to gain personal satisfaction in what you do, but also enabling you to put back into society, wherever that society may be, some of the knowledge and experience you've gained here at the University of Salford. As my own association of nearly 40 years with this university draws to a close, I would like to remind you that there is no such thing as a former member of this university. You, like me, are all alumni, members of the worldwide network of Salford graduates for life. Graduands, I salute you. I now invite Professor David Storey to present Dr. Ralph Cohn for the degree of Doctor of Science Honoris Causa.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, distinguished guests, Salford graduates, ladies and gentlemen. On the occasion of degree congregations, I look at the sea of faces before me and wonder what each person is going to do in their future life, who each one of you is. I wonder, how many displaced nationals are present in this congregation today? Are there any future millionaires out there? How many of you will become distinguished scientists, fellows of the Royal Society? Will anyone achieve fame as a recording artist or through some other artistic endeavor? Well, hopefully, some of you will make your mark as scientists. Some of you may even become famous as actors or authors or singers. And I'm certain lots of you will hope to become millionaires. But who amongst you will become not only a distinguished scientist, but also an accomplished performing artist and a millionaire all rolled into one? Is it possible for one person to succeed in so many ways? Well, dear members of the congregation, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Dr. Ralph Cohn. Ralph was born into a Jewish family in Leipzig in eastern Germany, close to Russia. And between the world wars, this part of Germany was very vulnerable and very unstable. And Ralph's father decided to move his young family to Holland, where they could continue life in a more peaceful environment. Sadly, a despot called Hitler had other ideas, and when the Nazis brutally invaded the Low Countries in 1940, the Cohn family was forced to flee, luckily being allowed to board the last cargo ship to leave Amsterdam on May the 14th, 1940, bound for they knew not where. Had they known it was heading for Liverpool, they may have changed their minds. Thankfully, the Merseysiders decided that the refugees were friendly aliens and allowed them to stay in the UK, but moved them to temporary accommodation in a disused church in Wigan. They say, out of the frying pan into the fire. That springs to mind. And how these poor displaced persons must have wished that they could have remained in beautiful old Amsterdam. Fortunately, the good Lord took a hand, and the Cohn family was found permanent housing in Manchester, or Salford to be precise, just off Bury New Road in Higher Broughton, where lots of Salford University students live today. And so a life began in Salford. Destitute and penniless, the Cohn family began their lives again in Salford, and with schooling for the children a priority, an interview was arranged at Manchester Grammar School. Unfortunately, the 12-year-old Ralph spoke not a single word of English, and the High Master at MGS suggested that if he were to study there, this might, well, prove to be a disadvantage. So Ralph went to a local elementary school in Grecian Street in Salford, which still stands today, and then on to Hope School before winning a place not at MGS, but at Salford Grammar School, where several of his newly found local and eventually lifelong friends were already pupils. Against a background of the Manchester Blitz and other hardships of war, the young Ralph excelled at school and in 1947 won a scholarship to Manchester Victoria University. As we heard from our Chancellor, Salford University didn't exist as such in those days, otherwise I feel sure Ralph would surely have come to study here. Although initially thinking about medicine, Ralph decided to read for a BSc in pharmacology, later doing an MSc and a PhD in the same area, and eventually winning the university's Wilde Prize in pharmacology. Then, with the world as his oyster, Ralph won a scholarship from the Royal Pharmaceutical Society and spent 3 years as a postdoctoral fellow working in Rome with Nobel laureate Sir Ernst Chain and Professor Daniel Beauvais, after which he secured a fellowship to work with Professor Gilman in New York. Eventually, however, the need to earn a living led Ralph to enter the pharmaceutical industry, where he became involved in the development of new drugs. In 1958, he became head of exploratory research at SmithKline & French in the US, and in 1965 was appointed managing director of RoboPharm, a biological company based in Switzerland. However, in 1969, Ralph decided to set up his own company for the independent testing and evaluation of new drugs on a worldwide basis. And in 1990, his company was presented with the Queen's Award for Export Achievement. The success of Ralph's company over 35 years enabled him to accumulate significant wealth, and in 1991 he established the Con Foundation to support the arts, particularly music, as well as innovation, humanitarian aid, and scientific and medical research. For example, the Royal Society's Science in Society program today is supported by the Con Foundation. So, not a bad story, I think you will agree. However, Ralph's story doesn't end there. At an early age, Ralph developed a serious interest in classical music, and as a young boy in Amsterdam, studied the violin. But it was during his time in Rome that Ralph's love of singing flourished under Maestro Mercatoni. Some would say that the finest ever Italian lyric tenor was Beniamino Gigli, whom Ralph heard sing in Manchester in 1950. When Ralph arrived in Rome, he desperately wanted to meet Gigli, who had retired there. But Ralph's voice tutor insisted that he was not ready to have an audience with the great man. Undeterred, Ralph resolved to find a way, and discovering that Gigli was an insulin-dependent diabetic, he persuaded his tutor, a close friend of Gigli, to tell Gigli that he was tutoring a young English medical student who was doing research on diabetes, and that did the trick. Gigli agreed to meet Ralph and invited him to sing. After the audition, Gigli agreed with Ralph's tutor that there was, well, still room for improvement in the young student's voice, but nevertheless, the meeting had taken place, and Gigli was sufficiently impressed to provide Ralph with a testimonial and encouragement to continue his training as a classical singer. Well, after leaving Rome, Ralph did continue his voice training, initially in New York and subsequently in London, and soon established himself as a renowned baritone singer. He's given numerous recitals in England and abroad, including concerts in the Royal Albert Hall, the Wigmore Hall, the Queen Elizabeth Hall, and St. John Smith Square. In 1997, Ralph initiated the Wigmore Hall Con Foundation Song Competition, and also the annual Bach Prize at the Royal Academy of Music. And this year, 2009, the Royal Academy of Music began a Bach cantata series under the patronage of the Con Foundation. I'm delighted that our honorary graduate today has not rested on his laurels, but has continued to explore new horizons. Ralph has recorded 16 CDs, and amongst these is a CD recorded only last year, devoted to Italian Baroque arias, accompanied by the English Chamber Orchestra. As a final tribute to our honorary graduand, I would ask you to join me in listening to his melodic rendition of a short aria entitled Nel cor più non mi sento by the composer Giovanni Paisiello, a celebrated composer of the 18th century. This arietta comes from the opera La Bella Molinara and tells of the torment and despair of a heart broken by love.
Nel cor più non mi sento brilla gioventù, cagion del mio tormento, amor sei colpa tu. Mi pizzichi, mi stuzzichi, mi pungichi, mi mastichi, che cosa è questo in me? Pietà, 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 amor ceto che disperar mi fa. Nel cor più non mi sento, brillava gioventù, cagion del mio tormento. Amor, sei colpa tu. Mi pizzichi, mi stuzzichi, mi pungichi, mi mastichi, che cosa è questo in me? Pietà, 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 amore anceto che disperar mi fa.
Chancellor, it gives me great pleasure to present Ralph Cohn, Salfordian, pharmacologist, entrepreneur, musician and philanthropist, for the award of the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by this university, I confer on you the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa. Many congratulations.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, Professor Story, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a huge privilege, pleasure, and indeed humbling experience for me to be back in Salford, the city of my youth, to which I owe so much in my life, and to be the recipient of the prestigious degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa, which this city's university has so generously decided to confer upon me. And I'm particularly aware how much I'm in debt to Salford, its institutions and its people, when I listen to the warm-hearted citation delivered by Professor David Story. Clearly, Professor Story has had to work very hard indeed in presenting such a colorful picture of me. But then, who am I to argue with him? I can only say that Professor Story, in addition to being a very distinguished scientist, is also an extremely gifted storyteller who fully merits its name. If only my mother could have heard him today, she would have believed every word. Furthermore, Professor Story very kindly promoted my recordings. And now that Michael Jackson no longer directly competes with me, who knows, my time may well have come. But I now have a real problem to try and live up to all you have heard. I'm particularly pleased that this graduation event is taking place in the Lowry Theatre, named after a distinguished Salfordian artist whose works I have always admired but not been able to afford. This attractive venue has the additional advantage of allowing me to feel entirely relaxed and at ease compared with the traumatic experience once I endured not far from here. In July last year, the British Pharmacological Society elected me to an honorary fellowship to coincide with their annual meeting at Manchester University. The venue for the award ceremony and dinner was Manchester United's football club at Old Trafford. Now, during my school and university days in Salford and Manchester, I had always been an enthusiastic and loyal Manchester City supporter, and the thought of being honored in the enemy camp and sup with the devil incarnate filled me with deep apprehension. I explained my reservations to the president of the Pharmacological Society, and he sympathized with my predicament. He assured me that I would be forgiven for showing such particularly poor judgment in selecting the wrong team during my youthful days. Moreover, he would ensure that those attending would refrain from wearing their traditional and particularly charming ties with the slogan, "Death to City supporters." I recently discovered that Lowry was also a City supporter, so I'm in reasonable company after all. But let me now briefly return to the days when I arrived in this country in 1940 and settled in Salford some 69 years ago. We were war refugees from Holland after that country had been brutally invaded by the Nazis in May 1940. We arrived in Liverpool penniless, having left all our belongings behind, and were warmly received and allowed to live in any city of our choice. Britain, you will remember, was at war with Germany since 1939. We settled in Salford as my father had been active in the textile industry and knew people in the same trade in Manchester. He was thus able to work out and maintain his young family under difficult circumstances. My older brother joined the British Army, and my cousin, who was medically qualified, became a member of the Department of Hematology at Manchester Royal Infirmary, who also subsequently joined the Army. I had to learn English, which I didn't know at the time. I attended Grecian Street and Hope elementary schools, neither of which probably still exist these days. The teachers made special arrangements for me to be coached by some of the senior boys, and it didn't take long for me to acquire sufficient vocabulary to make myself understood. I have not forgotten the trouble to which both teachers and my school friends went to teach me and make me feel at home. For all of this, I will always be deeply grateful. I then attended Salford Grammar School, which also no longer exists. Although these were war years when we experienced a serious shortage of teaching staff, nevertheless, we were taught the complete curriculum as arrangements were made with Broughton High School for girls for us to have joint lessons, something which filled us youngsters with great joy. Our first experience of youthful, if innocent, love. My years at school were extremely happy in spite of the war, my family being refugees and suffering hardships to which, however, the rest of the population was equally subjected. During 1940, 41 and 42, we spent many nights in air-raid shelters, and the atmosphere and good humor of all those who shared those improvised dwellings was such that we came to look forward to these nights out. There was always someone who did the brewing up to keep us hydrated, and a cup of tea was the magic formula for everyone's morale. Manchester suffered heavy bomb damage, and Salford did not entirely escape the ravages of war either. In those years before the passing of the Clean Air Act, Salford in winter was plagued with fog and smog, and I well recall the occasions when those pea soup fogs were so dense that conductors had to walk in front of the bus and shine the torch to indicate the curb to the driver. When I came to Manchester University in 1948, thus sadly before the establishment of Salford University, I studied pharmacology. Those were very exciting times from a drug discovery point of view. The first antibiotic was produced in the form of penicillin to treat infectious diseases. Streptomycin, the first drug to effectively treat tuberculosis, drugs for cardiovascular and rheumatological diseases, and vaccines for the prevention of viral diseases such as polio. I decided to devote my working life to the field of drug research and ultimately set up my own organization, which provided the medical and scientific services for a new drug to be thoroughly investigated. Altogether, I spent 14 years in Salford, which were crucial in the development of my career. I cannot begin to tell you of my gratitude to you all for the privilege and honor you have bestowed upon me here today. It has allowed me to be reminded of events which had long been buried in the deep recesses of my mind, and you have in fact brought me back to relive part of my youth. I thank you for it with all my heart. The Salford School and University of Manchester have inspired me at a difficult period in my life and helped me to overcome so many problems for which I shall forever be thankful. Salford and Manchester also prepared me for my second career in music, which became very much part of my life. I mentioned before the name of the famous local artist Lowry, so let me also draw your attention to a very distinguished local scientist, Professor A.V. Hill, who won the Nobel Prize in 1922 whilst at Manchester University for his fundamental work on muscle physiology. He was an inspiration to young people. At a prize-giving ceremony, he once drew an analogy between the function of muscle and the capacity of individuals for achievement in life. If muscle is stretched more before it's stimulated, it contracts more powerfully and to a greater extent. Similarly, if a person aims in life only as high as he thinks he can go, then that will be his best achievement. If, however, he aims higher for a more challenging goal, then he will achieve greater things and exceed his highest expectations. I was advised that in my response today, I should give a stirring message to all the graduates. Perhaps a sterling, spelled slightly differently, saying might be appropriate. You may remember the famous racing driver Stirling Moss, who once said, "When you think you have everything under control, it means you are not driving fast enough." It is a profound thought. Don't become complacent in life, thinking you've done enough. You can always do more. Exert yourself just a little more. Persist, be enthusiastic, believe in yourself, and others will believe in you. And particularly in these troubled times, be flexible and determined to succeed. If you do this, I assure you, you will be the winner and richly rewarded. I am now involved in giving something back to the country which has been so generous to me. And I'm reminded of the words by Winston Churchill, who once famously said, "You make a living by what you do and a life by what you give." Thank you very much.
We now proceed to the award of postgraduate and undergraduate degrees.
Ladies and gentlemen, each postgraduate student will be presented individually for their award. The degree of Doctor of Science is the highest academic award a university can bestow upon one of its graduates in a scientific discipline, and is made to individuals who are judged by external peers to have made an original, sustained and distinguished contribution to their field of research, and thereby hold an authoritative standing. The degree is being awarded to Professor Peter Williams for the completion of research which has made a major contribution to our knowledge of water-soluble polymers. Professor Williams' work has focused upon examination of the nature of naturally occurring water-soluble polymers and included detailed studies of their behavior in aqueous solutions, both in the bulk and at the interfaces. This is an extremely important area of scientific research, and Professor Williams' findings have had implications in several industrial sectors, including oil extraction, personal care products, and food technology. Chancellor, on behalf of the Institute for Materials Research, I therefore present for the award of Doctor of Science, Peter Anthony Williams. On behalf of the Research Institute for the Built and Human Environment for the award of Doctor of Philosophy, I present Fouad George Beswati. Paul Kendrick. On behalf of the Institute for Materials Research, Paul Robert Hampson. Also on behalf of the Research Institute for the Built and Human Environment, Jonathan Philip Rains. On behalf of the Informatics Research Institute, Po Yen Chang. On behalf of the Research Institute for the Built and Human Environment, Christopher George Marston. And David Hetherington. The final research award is a joint award of Doctor of Philosophy between the University of Salford and the University of Poitiers in France. The recipient is one of the first students in England to graduate under this Anglo-French cooperation, and I'm delighted that Dr. Jacques Chevalier, Scientific Counselor to the French Embassy and the principal architect of the scheme, is able to be present at today's ceremony. On behalf of the Institute for Materials Research and FEMA, I present for the award of Joint Doctor of Philosophy, Amy Sarah Gandhi.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, distinguished guests, graduands, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Faculty of Science, Engineering and Environment and the School of Computing, Science and Engineering, I present for the award of Master of Science, Computer Science, Salah Abdul Khalek Al-Mezougi. Chi Kao, Kari Abdallah Lazwed, For the award of Master of Science, Data, Telecommunications and Networks, Sabi Ahmed Abbasi. Shafat Shabir Awan. Hewa Balisane. Ian Jeffrey Bates. Pavan Kumar Gangisetti. Afzal Hussain. Mansour Isan. Mohammed Isra Khan. Nasir Ali Khan. Ravali Malampati. Santosh Nagula. Mohammed Hassan Nazir. Emmanuel Ndidi Nwambu. Temitope Olugbenga Ogunrinde. Opemipo Olusegun Onau Pemipo. Yasir Raza. Muthu Sona. For the award of Master of Science in Databases and Web-Based Systems, Mian Saqib Ahmed. Shaya Oti. Reza Kalantari Dulatabad. Carl Michael Moore. Tanvi Sethi. Aftab Ali Shah. Sami Ullah. And for the award of Master of Science in Vacuum Engineering, Matthew Stephen Acton. Kawa Farouk Jamil. Robert John Asbury. Master of Science in Virtual Reality and Games Technology, Brian Thomas Waterfield. And now, on behalf of the School of Environment and Life Sciences, I present for the award of Master of Science in Analytical Biosciences and Drug Design, Francis John Ball. Kauthar Mohammed Ibrahim. Roshani Mistry. Hina Naz, Shubhra Nigam, Clotilde Turt, Badri Nath Vangara, for the award of Master of Science, Applied Geographical Information Systems, Ada Stella Maris Eze. For the award of Master of Science, Biotechnology, Hajar Benzgir. Dinesh Dubey, Murudula Hari, Annie Dominic Karukail, Naveen Malela, Hamad Maksud, Sajnu Varghese, Sivalinga Sasanka Veliveli, Olawumi Adaramodu, for the Master of Science, Environmental and Public Health, Antoinette Angwach. Mahmoud Shaltut. Charlotte Shizoba Ururuka. For the award of Master of Science, Environmental Protection, Gabriela Homalova. Stanley Njuangang. Okarite Amelia Nonji. Nalika Swanamali Saneviranthna. For the Master of Science in Housing Practice, Alexandra Clintworth. Mike John Glennon. Richard Kettrick. Stuart David Ratcliffe. Teresa Jane Upton. And for the Master of Science in Molecular Parasitology and Vector Biology, Simon Andrew Farnworth. Hussein Hizaji. Farah Jaber. Daryl Lewis. Rashini Shanika Pereira. Rizwan Shazad. Jade Kathleen Whittingham Dowd. For the award of Master of Science, Occupational Safety and Health, Temezgen Abebe Jamani. Belinda Adamiak. Jones Chiawa. Stephen James Clancy. Linda Christine Gibbons. Katrine Priest-Jones. Lewis Carl Jones. Darren Robert McHugh. Anthony Mark Obatelli. Stephen Williamson. For the award of Master of Science, Safety, Health and Environment, Aderonki Ayalabola. The Master of Science, Planning Sustainable Environments, Aneza Paliagka. For the Master of Science in Safety, Health and Environment, Evelyn Ofanuge Abojo. Adarsh Krishnarajan. Augustine Oluwamimo Olumoye. Abimbola Oradugba. Liam Patrick Quigley. Farah Ayuni Sahafea Shafi. Naveed Akhtar Tunio. For the postgraduate diploma in housing practice, Edward William Kayemba. Paul Mkwapat Satida. David Edward Thornton. And for the award of Postgraduate Diploma, Occupational Safety and Health, Paul Ralph Ingham. And Dilip Kumar Mistry.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Our undergraduate students will be presented for their awards in groups of up to 3. I would be grateful if you would reserve your applause until after the final name in each group has been announced. Chancellor, on behalf of the School of Environment and Life Sciences, I present for the award of Bachelor of Arts with Honours in Environmental Studies, Daniel Crawshaw and Thomas Hartley. For the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Environmental Geography, John Dickinson and Amy Helen Keeling. Rhys Harrison Kibble and Gerard Malcolm Omar. For the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Environmental Health, Laura Davies, Donna Hasty and Sarah Jane Hurley. David Kettlewell, Jeanette Janice Nuttall and Katie Ann Pollock. Suzanne Helen Ravenscroft and Charlotte Linda Rose. Chancellor, the following award is presented posthumously to Robert Paul Whitfield, and the award will be received by his wife Karen and daughter Georgia. For the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Environmental Management, Richard Wayne Bagnall, Yu Huang and Sabin Claude Coletta. David James Lomas, Emily Jane Simpson and Zhao Li Zhu. For the award of Foundation Degree Science in Waste Management, Angela Aspinall and Jacqueline Jane Book. James Philip McCartney and Andrew Robert Reeves.
Chancellor, on behalf of the Faculty of Science, Engineering and Environment and the School of Environment and Life Sciences, I present for the award Bachelor of Science with Honours in Applied Bioscience, Daniel Peter Bonner, Michelle Bradburn and Louise Ann Hickey. Cheryl Rose McCormick, Joanne Haley Noon, and Michael Francis Rawlins. Stacey Eve Smith and Dennis White. And for the award Bachelor of Science with Honours in Biochemical Science, Jessica Landau, Christopher Michael Puchalka, and Lena Schroeder. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Biological Science, Mohammed Abdul Bashith, Timothy Stephen Duncan, and John Michael Emmons. Joshana Ford, Anthony Ho, and Jonathan Holland. Matthew John Hughes, Sadia Munir Hussain, and Paul Anthony Jones. Mahad Kader, Yonta Merey, and Marina Mikhail. Ruben Joseph Pace, Sarah Louise Pova, and Danica Elizabeth Puzinowski. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Biological Science with Studies in the USA, Dion Ellison. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Biomedical Science, Daniel Brown, Wakas Din, and Carmen Lucy Gibbard. Munawar Hussain, Rachel Sarah Jackson, and Fiona McNamee. Emily Moore, Mariam Muradi, and Robin James Murray. Sarata Sambhu and Mohammed Shabazz. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Biomolecular Sciences, Geba Al-Shadi Adwick and Sarah Joanne Tomlinson. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Environmental Bioscience, Laura Diane Bates and Nicola Mary Konama. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Human Biology and Health, Robin Zipporah Friedlander and Emma Kay. Leanne Johnson and Jane Richards. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Human Biology and Health Science, Yasmin Ahmed and Florence Tafadzwa Marenagis. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Human Biology and Infectious Diseases, Ensar Al-Abedi, Christine Kathleen Jordan, and Faisal Khan. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Pharmaceutical Science, Chukwinonso Chukwuka, Maya Heshmati Rafsanjani, and Mukhtar Ahmed Patel. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Wildlife and Practical Conservation, Kerry Jane Martin, Rachel Elizabeth Saville, and Zoe Josephine Verity. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Wildlife Conservation with Zoobiology, Nicola Jane Andrews, Charlotte Brooks, and Brittany Broughton. Fiona Jane Cassidy, Rebecca Jane Dassan, and Rachel Green. Colette Guy, Nicola Jane Herzog, and Stephen Hitch. Andy Hogg, Hannah Ray Cokas, and Emma Margaret Lewis. Sharon Jean McBride, Sarah Agnes McCarthy, Nathan John McConnell. Felicity Elspeth Ann Parsons, Catherine Ann Louise Rigby, and Rebecca Louise Royce. Zoe Seven and Susan Caroline Walthall. Alice Louisa West and Stacey Helen Elizabeth Wignall. And for the Foundation Science degree in microbiology, Louise Barrow O'Connor, Beverly Ann Brady, and Angela Franklin. Madeline Hill, Stephanie Jean Marshall, and Erica Lillian Robinson. Claire Elizabeth Tyra and Xiaoxian Su.
Chancellor, on behalf of the Faculty of Science, Engineering and Environment and the School of Environment and Life Sciences, I present for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Community Governance, Diana Elizabeth Dawson, Susan Marie Roberts and Peter Tacona. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Housing Practice, Kevin William Ashcroft, Karen Everall, Peter William Grosset. Elaine Jackson, Joanne Lewis, and Samuel David Wyatt. For the award of Bachelor of Science Ordinary in Community Governance, Julie Gibson. And for the award of Bachelor of Science Ordinary Regeneration Neighbourhood Renewal, Paula Dawn Rosen. And for the award of Bachelor of Science Ordinary in Biological Sciences, Adetola Ogunubi. And for the award of Foundation Degree Science in Regeneration Neighbourhood Renewal, Patrick Goodison and Philip John Riley. Chancellor, for the award of Bachelor of Sciences with Honours, Human Biology and Infectious Diseases, I present Mustafa Moradi. And for the award of Master of Science, Databases and Web-Based Systems, Mohammed Ali Marasi. And for the award of Master of Science, Data, Telecommunications and Networks, Oludlapu Ayambambu Obikoya. And for the award of Master of Science, Environmental Protection, Nimi G. Dan Jumbo. And for the postgraduate certificate in Data, Telecommunications and Networks, Saeed Sabir Alam. And for the award of Master of Science, Data, Telecommunications and Networks, Mohammed Usman Amin. And for the award of Master of Science, Analytical Biosciences and Drug Design, Claude P. Neonburu. And for the award of Master of Science, Data, Telecommunications and Networks, Mirza Naveed Beg. And for the award of Master of Science, Data, Telecommunications and Networks, Uchenna Chiazum Ekpe. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours Biomedical Science, Safura Kanam Ali. And for the award of Bachelor of Science with Honours in Pharmaceutical Science, Mohammed Shushibur Rahman.
Before we close, and with Ralph Con's very moving words echoing in our ears, I wonder if we could all join in a tumultuous round of applause for our new graduates. Can I ask our graduates now to put their hats on? I declare the ceremony closed.
Well, as the procession leaves the Lyric Theatre for the last time today, I have just enough time to tell you about the order of events for tomorrow. There will be 3 ceremonies at which students from the School of Built Environment, Salford Business School, Salford Law School and the Revon Centre will be presented. We'll also see 5 eminent Salfordians receive honorary awards. Jonathan Griffin will be here tomorrow, so it is goodbye from me. I do hope you can join Jonathan from just before 10:15 tomorrow morning.